Okay, so we'll be bringing you a lot more as to the responses given by President Mahama when all these questions were asked. But, I mean, the focus really is on the kind of questions that were asked at this particular Meet the Press series. And joining me now in studio to help us assess some of these questions and the way forward, as well as the President's fight against corruption, is Executive Director of the Media Foundation for West Africa, Suleiman Ibrahima, who joins me live now in studio to shed some thoughts on this. So, Ibrahima, good morning. Many thanks for joining us in studio.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
So, I'm sure you did hear most of the questions that were asked, particularly the ones we just sampled and played to you. One would say, I mean, as a journalist, you need to be asking probing questions that really ought to reflect the needs of society, not certain questions. And many are believing that, well, some of the questions that were asked were not really the kind of questions we really needed to ask. Is that an assessment you agree with?
Well, I think that yesterday's event was a very important event because everywhere in the world it's difficult to have the president having time to interact with journalists the way it was done yesterday. And so when you have that opportunity, people would normally expect that, okay, if you had one question to ask your president, what would that question be? And that is why people pay a lot of attention to the quality of questions that are asked, not just here in Ghana, but anytime, for example, the White House has this kind of encounter with the press, there's always analysis about the quality of questions that were asked. Now, I think that it's important for us to look at it from different angles. First of all, did the questions touch on key issues? Did they relate to matters of concern to the people of Ghana? Secondly, even if they were about issues that are considered very important, were they framed in such a way that it would elicit the kind of response or the kind of information that the people would want to have? And then, of course, people would want to look at whether or not the president adequately responded or addressed the questions that were asked. Now, in terms of the first aspect, whether or not the questions that were asked were bordered on what many would consider as relevant issues, I would say yes. I think overall, if I'm not mistaken, there were about 26 questions that were asked, and the questions ranged from security to energy to human rights to corruption, education, and so on and so forth. And I think that no one can dispute the fact that these are perhaps some of the most important issues to deal with as a country. Now, the other bit is whether or not the questions were framed in a way that would, push the president to give us the kind of information that we think would be important. And I think that is where perhaps we didn't do well. And having looked at the questions, and I must say, well, these are my opinions, having looked at the questions, I would say that there were about 10 out of the 26 questions that I would say were framed in a way that would kind of elicit the kind of responses that I would find relevant or many people would find relevant.
So 10 out of 26?
Yes, I think so.
So 10 important questions?
I think that almost every question was important, but was it asked in a way that would elicit the kind of response? Because, for example, my star question would be the question that was asked by Bernard Avle. And why? Because I think the question was grounded. It bordered on, first of all, an important issue, corruption, energy, and so on, all put together as one question. It was very well contextualized. So it is not just a question asked in vacuum. But then the basis for asking the question is A, B, C, D have happened, and therefore, why this? And I think that it was an important question, touched on multiple issues, and framed as one. Now, somebody asked about promises that have been, that have not been delivered, and how do you want us to trust you? The bit about that question that I thought was problematic was about relating it to elections. Why do you think we should trust you and vote for you in 2016? I think that it shouldn't be about whether or not to vote for the president. He is the president, even if it's for a day. I don't think that it should be about whether he would get the nod for 2016 or not. Now that you are the president, and you've made several promises which have not been delivered, why do you think we should trust you? Without even relating it to the 2016 elections. Otherwise, I think that there were several questions that were asked unimportant issues, but many of them turned out to be leading questions. For example, if you ask the president, are you concerned about A or B or C? The president could simply say, yes, I'm concerned about it. Are you worried about this? The president can say simply, yes, I'm worried about it. The Guantanamo Bay detainees issue, is there a monetary package to it? The president can simply say no or yes. And then apart from that, I think also what we don't do well in many of these encounters is taking advantage of questions that have been asked, responses that have been provided, and then, doing a good follow-up, which is something that I think sometimes we don't also do effectively, and it really played out in yesterday's encounter.
So a question like, for instance, TV personality, one of the TV personalities has come under a lot of attack, particularly on social media, for asking the president how, for instance, he sleeps at night.
Well, I can understand why people would feel that that wasn't a relevant question in the context of the event. If you have a one-on-one with the president, 30 minutes, 1 hour, I believe you can explore from national issues to personal issues to international issues and so on and so forth. But this was an opportunity once, perhaps in a number of months or once in a year. As I said, I wouldn't describe any question as being unimportant, but perhaps maybe the way it was framed. And people thought that, well, if you have this opportunity, it's not for you to ask the president how he sleeps or how he's able to deal with, the pressure on him and so on and so forth. In any case, if you are a president, you definitely would have to deal with pressure. And I think that I can understand why people were not satisfied with that kind of question.
Some of the concerns raised by others also suggest that, well, you can't really blame certain people. It takes certain people a while to warm up to some of these interviews. So, for instance, he or she may start off with a very light question and then build on that. And so the format of some of these programs, these Meet the Press series, don't really help journalists achieve the sort of answers, the kind of answers they really demand from our officials, our presidents, and all. They don't really tend to get them. Is that also something you agree with? At least you're being asked to stick to the core. 2 questions, that's it, nothing more.
Well, I think that is more than enough. And that is why I said, people then have the opportunity, because everyone, I assume, would have gone to the encounter or the event with a question in mind. And so you never know what other people think or would want to ask. But once you realize that somebody has asked a question, maybe not in the same wording, but it's about the same thing that you had in mind, then your attention should be about how the president responds to that question. For example, there were multiple questions asked about, touching on corruption. And I think in the concluding statement also, the president, and I should say that I was scandalized when I heard the president sort of justify the money that is spent on these buses branding, or as he called it, labeling. Even as eventually we are being told that we are committing about 1.7 million. And I would have been happier if there was a follow-up question to the president to say, well, you are justifying the imposition of taxes, the imposition of levies, and so on and so forth, on the basis that financially we are not doing well and we need to, commit more as citizens to help boost the country. And under the circumstance, how do you justify an expenditure of 1.7 million Ghana cedis to put your photographs on buses? So I think that where we may not have done well is making sure that we take advantage of earlier questions and then posing our questions as follow-up to questions that have been asked already, rather than almost repeating certain questions that have been asked by others.
Interesting you bring in the issue of corruption, and I've been joined now in the studio as well by an investigative journalist, one of our very own, Manasseh Azuria, when you do know him for his fantastic work when it comes to investigative pieces, and he's joined us in this particular discussion to help us understand 1 or 2 things. So Manasseh, thank you very much for joining us. Now, the first thing I'd like to find out from you, you have done a lot of investigative pieces. There's been JIDA, there's been, a whole lot, but let's be specific here. The president spoke about the monies being retrieved. He says a lot has gone into the system, and the fact that we've retrieved over 70 million cedis in monies that shouldn't have gone the way they went, and he's directed that a lot more be retrieved. From what the president said, does it look like the fight against corruption is actually lost?
Well, we can say it is lost, and we can say we are winning. It will depend on all of us, those of us in the media and the public as well. I quite agree with Sule when he talked about the fact that we failed to take advantage of follow-ups. Sometimes when you're interviewing someone, you don't necessarily have to go with all the questions, but some of the things they say, you can use it against them. He mentioned that with JIDA, they had taken about 50 million Ghana cedis, and this amount was monies that were paid to some companies as interest-free loans, that they were not entitled to these monies. They were illegal payments. Yeah. Those are the words of the president.
Yeah.
Now, a follow-up question would have been, what about the other monies that were not interest-free loans? These companies also got monies for work they did not do, and they are all in the JIDA report. So if you are taking only the interest-free loans, what about the rest, which is even more than the interest-free loans? So that question should have been asked. As we speak now, nobody is pursuing those monies. And it has taken about 3 years because the president gave 2013 as the ultimatum for the retrieval of these monies. 2014 came, 2015, we're in 2016, and even the interest-free loans, we haven't finished taking it. The other question I would have also asked if I were there, or if anybody knew about these incidents, the follow-up would be, what happened to the one who paid those illegal monies?
Is it Abuga Pele at the time?
No, it was the minister.
Okay.
The Minister of Youth and Sports. And so you agree that these payments are illegal and we are taking the money. But neither the one who...
Whoever sanctioned it is still there. Nothing has been done to him.
Nothing has happened to them. So these are some of the questions I think people should have asked. But on the whole, I think there has been an improvement over what we witnessed some years back. And I was joking that there were some particular people that I was happy they didn't ask questions because if they went, you could be sure they were going to mess up. But generally, I was impressed with what happened. They did better than previous years, but they can still do more. I think preparing for such assignments should not only be, okay, I'm going to ask about Guantanamo. So when you go, so what do you think? Everybody's not happy about this. If you ask a general question, you get a general answer. But if you ask a specific question, you should get a specific answer. Somebody could have just gone online to state the number of people who were released and who went back to their home countries to cause atrocities. And when you come, you put this to the president. This is all you are saying, but this is what we have. This is the reality on the ground. Should we not be concerned? Then you would have given him something difficult to think about and to...
So you think the journalists didn't push the president enough to give us the answers we really needed to hear?
Yes, I think the questions, the issues were important, but the framing of the question was what I think had a problem. Okay. And if you looked at questions by Bernard Avle, Kojo Yankson, and even Evans Mensah's question, when Evans asked, so like the previous one is the Attorney General, he didn't quite know what to say. So all that I'm saying is that if you make your question specific, but if you just mention the subject, so what are you doing about SADA? You will give the president the opportunity to speak for 1 hour about what is happening in SADA.
Without really answering the question he says you want him to answer.
But if you ask the president, in July 2012, you went to commission a Guinea fowl project for Roland Agambiri. You spoke so well about this man and the business. And you even mentioned that SADA would be encouraged to come on board. SADA eventually came on board, gave them 50 million. JIDA had given them 1.7 million to train the youth in Guinea fowl, and they didn't do it. You encouraged SADA to come on board. They gave them 50 million. We didn't see the Guinea fowls. What are you doing about this? Or what have you done about this? You can't tell me you don't know. So I think there are so many issues that we could state specific examples and then force him. But if you mention the topics, I'm not saying the questions they ask, they were relevant questions
But we
on
could have
the
gone a
relevant
step
issues
further.
yet
Okay.
to at least
I'll
give
be
us an issue.
seeking your views on a lot more on this, particularly seeing that as president, even if you're not asked specific questions and you're asked questions that generally border on some of these things, maybe you should be willing enough to give certain information. But I'll be coming to you shortly for that answer. I mean, both of you, I must say. But joining us in this conversation right now is the president of the Ghana Journalists Association, Alpha Moni, and he has some thoughts on this issue as well. Mr. Moni, good morning. Many thanks for your time. Does it come to you as a worry when a lot of people seem to be quite disappointed with some of the questions journalists in the country pose to the president when they are given the opportunity?
I don't think disappointment is my conclusive verdict. Generally, we did well, and as Manager said, the quality of the questions was higher than previous years. It seems many of the journalists did their homework well, and as Francis Bacon once said, a good question is half the answer. And so many of the questions were good, and except some few cases where we gave the president a latitude to do his PR gimmick. But yes, I will say without any fear of contradiction that generally the media performance ignites a high sense of pride that at least we have a media system which can rub shoulders with many systems all over the world. And all the topical questions were asked. And on the issue of non-follow-up questions, I believe the ground rules tackled the media personnel from doing the follow-up questions. And again, I agree with Manager. We could have more specific in certain questions. If the questions are so pointed, it's very difficult for the president to wriggle himself out of those tight questions. So it's a learning curve, and learning is not a destination; it's a process. I believe this platform will provide the process, provides the avenue for us to learn from what we did. And since I believe we pray that the pattern will continue because as we said, yesterday's performance was an improvement over previous years. We pray that the next opportunity will also register better performance.
Now, some also say that probably we journalists who went there yesterday probably did not ask the questions we were looking for because, one, they do not have access to the right information, so they do not really know which areas to push for which answers. I mean, there's been talk about the Right to Information Bill, which has been, it's been on the table for God knows how long. Nothing has really been done about it.
Exactly.
One would say, your association...
I had in mind this question, but I didn't have the opportunity because it's unthinkable. It's straight. This bill has been incubating for more than 10 years now. They put forth administration promise to pass it into law, and I remember the speed, the laxity with which they repealed the criminal libel law and the need to law. And the NDC one came, and then Tamil, the record as having said that you were going to pass that bill into law during the first 100 days of its administration. But 4 years passed, just like a whip, and nothing was done. And the president, being a journalist, indeed a member of the GJA, and also a PR expert, one would have expected that his administration and Parliament, of course, would have approached this the passage of this bill with all seriousness, all absorbing seriousness. But what we see is the litany of broken promises, and we are still back to one.
Mr. Moni, you're president of the GJA. If you expect the president to do certain things that will be in the interest of journalists and he's not doing them, you lead an association. Why haven't we heard you do anything about this whole time?
We have very loud and clear on this issue. But the GJA is a prominent member of the Coalition on the Right to Information. And we've done press conferences, we've done demonstrations, we have regional chapters, they'll be making noises, and indeed a lot of noise has been made, a lot of ink has been spilled.
One would ask whether the relevant noise has been made at the relevant authorities and relevant quarters.
But politics was so conspicuous by its absence. in all this equation. If officialdom and parliament, of course, will master the necessary political will, I believe would have gone past this issue of our right information bill. And it's so clear that look at the speed with which they passed certain laws.
So from what I gather, from what you're saying now, it suggests that successive governments have they just don't see this as relevant enough to be passed. They don't see themselves relinquishing.
As if they feel threatened by right information law. But in fact, the son of the coalition has said, of which is a prominent member, is that what is doing well, what is worth doing is worth doing well. We had occasion to reject the amendments which were done to the bill. On a previous bill, for instance, it was the Attorney General who was going to administer the proposed law, and we felt it was a bad piece of legislation because there's no difference between Attorney General and the government. And so we thought we didn't want a Zimbabwe example. Zimbabwe has the right to law, but it's an apology of a law. So we believe that we should have a law which will be responsive to our present needs and our present circumstances. So this has been our fight. But the bill has been going back and forth Parliament, and I'm happy to announce that the right amendments have been done, except in some areas like the fee regime, how much you are supposed to pay to get access to information. And we all know that access to information is so fundamental to the ability of not only journalists, but also ability of every citizen to hold to account positions of power and authority.
Okay. Mr. Moni, many thanks for your time on News Desk this morning. And Roland Moni is the president of the Ghana Journalists Association. He joined us over the telephone lines now with some thoughts on that particular one. I still have here with me in studio the executive director of the Media Foundation for West Africa, Sulemana Brahima. He's here with us in the studio. And I also do have here a senior journalist with the Multimedia Group and an investigative journalist for that matter, Manasseh Azuri Awene. So let me start off with you, Sulemana Brahima. You did hear Mr. Famoni say all those things. Do you seem to agree with him with most of the things he said?
Well, I think to a large extent he repeated, the sentiments expressed by Manasseh and myself, except that, in the area of the RTI, I think that, yes, I know the GJA is a member of the RTI coalition, as we are the Media Foundation for West Africa. But I just feel that perhaps the GJA, given the fact that that is the biggest group of journalists in the country, perhaps if there was that dedicated push to say, look, we are taxing members, from now on we want the media to give a big push for this law to be passed, I am sure that that is a leverage that the GJA has, and I'm sure if it's able to push that button, we may make significant progress.
So from what you said, does it look like the GJA has done enough to get this thing pushed?
Well, I wouldn't say they haven't contributed. I think that they have been an active player. But given what the association is and the fact that this is a group that brings together journalists and what journalists can do in terms of advocacy, I'm sure that the GJA can do more. That is not to say that they have failed. But just to say that on the RTI, I think that all governments that we've had, during which we've tried to have the legislation in place, I think have not or are not committed to transparent and accountable governance, and that includes this particular government. Because any government that is committed to true, transparent, and accountable governance would appreciate the fact that you cannot say you are committed to it without having an access to information legislation in place. And I think that our parliamentarians have also failed us big time. I don't think that they have represented the true interest of their people in terms of, because access to information is so fundamental, whether the person is in Bongo or is in Puziga or in Bebieni, Amiasobekwai, or wherever, whether the person is a farmer or a teacher or whatever, access to information is so fundamental. And when you say it, people say, oh, but what kind of information isn't available for the people? I think it is not about the information that government or authorities are willing to give to the people. It is the information that the people think they want.
Okay.
And we should have that legal backing that guarantees people the access to information that they want and not what authorities think they need.
I see. So, Manasseh, quickly in wrapping up, maybe just a bit on this RTI and the earlier question I asked before we went for that particular interview. I mean, you're president, you know the people need this information, but because they've not asked, you're not giving.
Well, it is in his interest not to give that information because he's a politician who seeks re-election. So if I were in his shoes and there's something negative, I don't think I would go and say anything negative about myself. And it's so with everyone else.
But really, if you are indeed committed to fighting corruption like you claim you are, I mean, you should really be able to give out some of these information.
Well, I'm not sure the president is committed to a fight against corruption. And I've written about it, and I've given several instances where there were the need or there were opportunities to act. And he often makes reference to the fact that we are in a democracy and we are not like other countries where you can do anything. But we're in this country when a certain young woman, a deputy minister, Vicky Hammer, said certain things that were not in favor of the party. He said certain things that put the party, it sort of disgraced the ruling party. Within 24 hours, this woman was fired. No committee or commission was set up. I'm not sure she was invited to come and explain or whatever. But we also have instances where people misappropriate funds, run into millions of cedis, and nothing happens to them. And they will tell you have to go through due process. So the fight against corruption, I think we have enough laws to do that. But it takes a president or a leader who thinks this is bad and I must fight it. We are seeing what Buhari is doing in Nigeria, and it is not the fact that Nigeria is still a military state, but it's doing so much. So I don't think we need any more laws or any other thing. If only he's committed, we will see it happen.
I see. Right. Those were the concluding words of Manasseh Azuria, when a senior multimedia journalist here at Joy News, that's the multimedia group, and he's been telling us much more about what the president has been saying about the fight against corruption. Well, he seems to believe the president isn't as committed as he paints that particular picture. And we've also been joined in the studio by the executive director of the Media Foundation for West Africa, Sulemana Brahima, who has also joined us here. Many thanks for your time, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Right, so we can now move on and do a few more stories before we go for our first break. And customers of the beleaguered microfinance company DKM were earlier scheduled to meet with the company's officials and other stakeholders on the status of refunding their monies. But information reaching us indicates that this meeting, which was earlier slated for today, has been postponed. Let's try and get a lot more understanding as to what really could have caused this particular postponement. And Precious Semevo is our correspondent on this particular beat. He joins us live now from the Brown Hartford region. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. Now, what reasons are being given for this particular postponement?
Well, the PRO for the RCC this morning told me that the RCC just wants to ensure that everything that they put in place will be able to accommodate the large anticipated, audience. So they are planning of getting an auditorium that will be big enough to contain the number of people that they anticipate to be taking part in this particular forum. So he will be confirming the venue as well as the date, which tentatively we know is on Friday. Then thereafter, we can talk more about that.
Right, Precious. And have you been speaking to some of these persons who were hoping that at least they would get some information as to when exactly their monies are going to be paid to them? Have you been able to speak to any of them, and what have they been saying? What are their sentiments?
Yes, their sentiments have been the same. They are only interested in getting their, investment back. Those that I spoke to yesterday said they are not interested in promises and measures and all that. Their interest is only to get their investment. And fortunately, I have a few of them with me, and I'll be engaging them briefly as to their reaction after what the president said yesterday at the press conference. Now I have Malik here. Malik, you listened to the president, at the press conference and touched so much on this microfinance saga. Now, as an affected customer, how do you react? Do you think what the president said is assuring and you know that you get your investment back?
Thank you very much. But the fact is that what President said yesterday couldn't make with the customers at all. And government cannot inform us with the customer that you don't know anything about DKM. The last came here with this and also original chief they asked of this they asked of him what is he doing about the DKM issues. That he has handled everything for this and Bank of Ghana. So we should wait till they come out with different listen. We wait till this day that we are doing this and they've not said anything. But the fact is that what the government said yesterday is not fair. Look at this. Let me say, as a government, is the father of the nation. And one thing, once we are suffering, he has to say something. So please, you answer questions. But these days, you settle, you get somewhere and say, know what to do. But the government is not performing well concerning of these DKM issues. So we are appealing to him that whatever it is, should come out with different issues. So that we, the customers of DKM, God is love, Jessa and other defense will be happy about it. We are not happy at all. Get to Bono half years, it's like a disaster. It's more than disaster. So we are appealing to government that it should come out with different lessons. But what he told us yesterday that he don't know anything about DKM is not true. It's never true.
All right, so that was Malik then. I have this other man here, Theophilus, also joined us. Now, Theophilus, were you okay with what the president said? Are you assured that the measures put in place, some have been arrested, your investment will be passed to you?
For me, it's long overdue. This thing could have done it long time ago, but I don't know why they've waited for so many years before he assuring us that you tackle it. In fact, for me, it's easier said than done. We've heard about these promises so many times. If only they would do it, why not? You know, people are suffering, and as you can see, I hope you've interviewed a lot of people. People are really suffering. So if the earlier, the better. That is what I can say. The earlier, the better. We are waiting. If we can do it, even today, we will be happy. We will be glad. But before you go, he said something yesterday that he was even shocked that intellectual people are with DKM. It's a registered company. For me, when I wonder about what he said, what he's telling us is that if you are intellectual, you don't have to associate yourself with a microfinance institution, which is very bad. This is a registered company with the Bank of Ghana, giving lances to a state.
Right.
Is it my responsibility to go and check them whether they are doing the right thing or not? Is it not the duty of Bank of Ghana? So I was shocked. Those issues or that statement came from the president himself. I was totally shocked, to be frank with you.
So that was another frustrated customer. And the general, feeling and mood in Sunyani is that they are only interested in their money. And they are preparing themselves for this forum, which has been postponed to Friday. They are eager to participate and know their outcome. But that will not stop them from embarking on a demonstration, which they have an approval from the police command here in the Tonga region. So on Monday, all the affected customers will cite themselves for a demonstration that they send that the Sika mine against government, against the Bank of Ghana to ensure that they get their investment back. Here in Sunyani, the mood is that we want our money.
Okay. Many thanks for that particular update. Precious Semevo, our correspondent in the Bono-Ahafo region, bringing us a lot more content. Well, that sounds like business. So time now for some business here on News Desk right after these messages.